Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser, and for today's episode, I have on with me another very special guest. Let's welcome on Dre Aguero, who has been in the band, which I'm very familiar with, Foolproof, also Arsenal 88, and more. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Dre, welcome in. How are you?
I am doing well, waking up from a party from last night, but excited to be with you
Okay.
and to share, some of the things that went down in the late 90's, early 2000s.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on and to tell that story. So let's get into how it all began for you. So let's go back to the early years for yourself, Dre. What do you remember about your early beginnings? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Kendall. I was born in Peru. Family moved to Boca Raton when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Then we moved to Kendall, and there I went to, public local schools. It's when I finally got to Killian High School that the whole world of, punk rock and underground and all that stuff began for me. Um, Basically, we were grunge kids in middle school. And then getting to high school, I walked into class. I made friends with a kid named Buster. He was a little older than us. And he said, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Descendants. And I'm like, I've seen it. I've seen it on flyers. I've seen it on things, but I never heard the Descendants before. So he's like, well, I have a tape. I have a tape deck. And I said, holy shit, this is it. This is where everything comes together. Not too long from then, I ended up at Cheers. He told me, hey, I'm gonna scoop you up. We're gonna take you, bring all the friends. We're gonna take you to Cheers to see a real show. And so as a kid, I went, and then we opened. I think Amy Fiddler was doing the door that day, and we walked in, and it was Cottonside, um, another local band, Cottonside, on stage, rocking it. People were moshing, they were skanking. Uh, it was just mayhem, and it seemed like uncontrolled, and it seemed right.
Was Cotton
And
Side the first local band you remember learning about, or was there someone that came before them?
no, I knew about Quit. I knew about Load. I knew about Milkshed. But those were my years. Like, that's the time frame that I got into all that. It's later that I discovered prior bands, but
Right.
at that time, that's who was playing at that time. So when I walked into Cheers and I saw that mayhem, I said, I want to do that. I want to be part of that. Whatever it takes, I want that. I want in today, tomorrow, the next day, and forever. So that basically triggered, um, you know, me getting into the grind, and I've always had a drum set, so that's how I started playing drums.
Did you have anyone in your family that was into music as well? Was that any
Yeah,
influence to you?
yeah. My dad always. There was always a drum set set up by my house. Even when I was born, there was a drum set up inside the house. But it's weird because I didn't really sit on it till I was like 10, 11. It just I knew that was my dad's stuff, so I didn't want to touch it. But then when I finally sat down, it was came natural.
What do you remember your first concert you ever went to?
My first concert, like rock or any music
Anything.
concert.
Yeah, your first concert. Now, if it was something you went to while you were in school, you can leave that one out. But, maybe your first concert you went to that was either on your own or with your friends or your family.
I took a date when I was a kid to go see Janet Jackson. Like our parents dropped us off at the
Nice.
Miami Arena, and we saw Janet Jackson live.
Nice. Not a bad first concert.
No, I mean I was just a kid, and it happened to be A Jackson, so I'm like, you know what, screw it. I want to see Janet Jackson. This is gonna be dope.
Yeah. 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 No,
I
that's
was always
fun.
influenced. Yeah, I was always influenced by like R&B. And sometimes you can hear it on some of the recordings where I do like tales of R&B in the punk rock somehow, and it worked out that way. So I like sonically the sound. of how R&B songs are structured and the simplicity of it. So I've always been into that.
Did you ever take anything in school, like band or any kind of
No,
music classes
we
at
had
all?
no training. Could read a little music, basic stuff, but you're not going to give me a sheet and I'm going to perform. It's mostly feel and just garage training.
Yeah. Understood. Now,
Yeah.
when you were going to Killian, which I went to Killian one time for a debate, that was the only time I was ever there, and I was just astounded. I was just amazed by how big that school was. So,
Yeah.
or maybe it felt that way to me. I don't know for whatever reason. But were there any other kids that you grew up with that were going to Killian that were doing anything band wise at that point that you can remember?
A ton, a ton. It was like during those days, it was like the mecca of the arts. It was like graffiti, rock, metal, hip hop. Um, Obviously, Cotton Side went to Killian, Out of Focus. I don't know if you remember Out of Focus, um, like ska punk
I
style.
do. Yeah, I do remember them.
Um, Scambinos, um, us, and others that I probably don't remember right now. But and then there was like a whole metal scene, and then graffiti was like out of control. Like all the bathrooms were all graffitied. People would like come in during the weekend and like trespass and paint like the lunch spill out area. Really cool. Like it was an artsy moment for all of us in Killian. So we would support each other, and everybody knew that, you know, all you got to do is go to Cheers, and you're gonna find all your friends there, and probably one of your friends is gonna be on stage, and that's what we're gonna do. So punk rock matinees on Sundays.
Yeah. Did you know that Amy Fiddler also had a label too, or like how did you get to know more about what she was doing in the scene?
Yeah, just showing up to Cheers and hanging out. Obviously, she started, but like once we had the band established, she started booking us for things. Eventually, she put us on the compilation, so that was a blessing. Um, there was always talks, and I would always bother her, hey, put us on the label. What's up? And it just didn't match at the time, and it just didn't happen. So we signed with another label in New Jersey, um, Direction Records,
Right.
and those guys, John and Nate from Direction, shout out to them. They're just awesome, and they believed. Um, Eventually, they signed Milkshed as well, so they put out one album. Melody's a friend of mine, on Direction, and what we liked about that is that they were based out of New Jersey. Um, and so when we would go tour, whatever, we had a place to stay, and then we would hit up all surrounding cities and states and not have to go very far. Now, well, everybody knows, but living in Miami and touring is like a nightmare.
Just a little
Logistic,
bit.
a
Just a little bit.
logistic nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit to the early kind of formation because I
Yeah,
imagine we're talking about Foolproof, right? The
yeah,
EP record, which came out in 2000. So let's go
yeah,
back a little bit and let's talk about the early formation of the band. How did it start?
yeah. It started with me on drums and vocals. So I had the little headset. I was trying to emulate my best Mike Marsh from the agency. Um, it wasn't easy because the speed and the singing was something else. And then Buster Trocine on guitar, Kevin Friedrichsen on the other guitar. Um, Actually, Buster played bass, so we were a three-piece. Buster on bass, Kevin on guitar, me drums and vocals. And then shortly after, I decided to step out of the drums and come to the front and just sing. And then we got Enrique Tofani on drums, the Brazilian dude, speedster. Kevin stayed on guitar. Buster left the band, and we got Joe Baraldi on guitar and Trey from Out of Focus on bass. So that's when like the main beginning core happened with Joe, Kevin, Trey, Enrique, and myself. Um, always two guitars for the melodies and stuff like that. And what Trey brought was the backups. If you hear like any Foolproof song, it sounds like there's two singers happening at the same time. And
It
that was
does.
right. It's like the whole time. And that's something that we focused on when we recorded, when we played live. It was like that was like our sound, and we stuck to that.
Where'd you guys practice?
Uh, we practiced in Kevin's house. He had like an office, and we were lucky enough for his mom to be very supportive, and she would make us lunch and order food for us, and just kind of like supporting the dream. She even bought us like a trailer so that we could tour, and so like major support
Yeah.
by Betty Friedrichsen. She believed and is like, okay, guys, you guys do live out your dreams and do it with joy. And it was great. Like we
Yeah.
had that support. So yeah, we would practice there a lot.
What did your family think about what you were doing, just getting into this band?
My family thought, it was kind of like inevitable because when it was time to go to college, I said, I'm not going to college. I'm going on tour. And, they were not very excited about that, obviously, because they were like, you need your education. Um, but I did it. And then, shortly after the twist, they were like, yeah, just do it. You go to college later if you have to. And so I did. So I did that. And then I also went to college. So
Right.
I knocked out two missions
You did. You got both
all
in
at
there.
once. Yeah.
You definitely did.
And
So
if I could say that to anyone, I would say do it because you can go to the university after and or
sure.
at the same time. Like things are different now.
Right. Right. And you're still fairly young, so you could kind of pull both off. So what do you remember about the first show Foolproof ever played?
Foolproof played the first show at a house party in West Kendall. Mayhem, straight mayhem. The people, like the owners of the house, like the parents were there. And they were like, what is going on? There was moshing, crowd surfing, houses getting destroyed. Um, that was a good time.
Was it a
That was-
big house or was it
it wasn't a big house. It was just like just cramped up in the back. We also played Lolo from Sweat Records. Her like 15th or 16th-year-old party. Her quince per se. But then like we got on stage, like our first show, thank God that the first show was at a house, like just to get the ball rolling.
right?
And then we got Cheers quickly. We were just like basically on road. We just opened up for touring bands or the core, which of bands that we eventually formed. If you see old flyers, like you'll always see Milkshed, Foolproof, Cotton Side, the Agency, just like nonstop, just show after show. That was like the crew. We're still all friends, so uh, whenever anyone's in town or we get together and we make sure that we spend the time because we had a good run for a while.
Was there someone helping the band get booked on some of those gigs, or was it just because everyone was kind of tight in the scene and it was just a matter of just being friends who you knew, and then you just got the shows from there?
Yeah, Amy helped a lot. I'm not gonna lie, she helped a whole lot. And thank you for that, Amy. But then just knowing the band and being active, and we were always there. We were flyering. We were doing the work ourselves. We didn't have like a manager or anything like that. It was just us booking and booking and booking and getting out there. And there's nothing to do. We weren't sitting on the couch. We were flying, concerts after concerts. Come to the show. Come to the show. From the ground up. So it was work, but we had fun.
Right. Quite different
No,
also back then that there, everything was word of mouth and flyers and
yeah,
quite different.
no cell phones,
Right.
pay phones.
Those things, yes.
Yeah, payphone. So, flyer and a payphone. Here you go.
Right.
And
Now,
so people started coming, man, and it was great. People started coming to the shows, and if we could like supplement with like other bands or touring bands, and that would happen as well. And you know, it was we had a good time doing it. We had a good time.
Uh,
Definitely a good time.
and I was going to ask that because you mentioned like the early show, the very first one in the house was Mayhem. How were the crowds at some of the shows that came after? Once you started playing some of the more clubs, like a Cheers, for example,
Yeah.
what were some of those crowds like back then?
Um, the craziest shows for us were at Fantasyland. It was like a warehouse down south. Um, I guarantee you there was no licensing to do anything there, but that's the way that it was.
Right.
Um, that was cool because that was when we were more comfortable. We were on stage. People were going nuts, you know, like mosh pit, circle pit, crowd surfing. Um, you can see some of it on YouTube. There's, you know, the Foolproof at Fantasyland. It's
Right.
there. Um, and you know, that's what we like, the circle pit. Fast punk rock, go to work. And we would dive in there as well, and we were not scared to get hurt or sweaty or whatever. We were just wild, man. Young wild.
Right. Did you ever have any injuries back then that you can remember just from when you
I did not. I
No.
survived all injuries. Knock
Nice.
on wood.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Um, you know, it's when we started touring that things got real, you know, like we were able to get some people out to shows here in Miami. And then you find yourself in a random spot in Arkansas. And here you are practicing for like 2, 3 people. Uh, and then you just wrap it up, pack it in, and move on, you know? Eventually the touring began to pick up, and the people started coming out to the shows when we were on tour. Sometimes we would piggyback on shows that were already set up, um, and we would just open. We would just be like, "Hey, we're in town. We're around. Um, you guys want to play? Sure, let's play." So like established shows that were already promoted, we would jump on last minute. And those were the best ones.
So, would you say that the band was touring more prior to the release of Ego, or was that after Ego had come out?
No, we were touring about a year and a half before the release. We like created a tour demo CD with like 3 songs, and we toured with that. Just we needed to get out. We needed to go, so we couldn't wait for the pressing. So we said, let's make like this supplementary little demo. It wasn't demo because it was actually the songs that were on the CD, but um, we took it on the road.
Was that Voices?
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And then Christian Salazar from Milkshed did the artwork for it. It was pretty cool. It's like this artsy type of dude. I don't have it. I don't even have it. I want it.
Yeah. I don't have it either. I want it too, but I know you might want it more. So,
I want it. Yeah. And then what helped on tour is that we were on a compilation based out of Chicago called Scrape Compilation with Avenged Sevenfold. So it was like when they started. And then, so we just got exposure through that. So when we would go to Chicago, Fireside Bowl and all that stuff, people knew like 88 Fingers Louie and all those bands, like they had already heard the song. So that was awesome. That was cool, you
I
know?
can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
We were like honored. We're like, what?
right.
We're just
Yeah.
kids.
I remember that compilation. There was a lot of good bands on it
Yeah.
for sure. Now, you guys recorded at Tapeworm in Miami. What was that like?
We did some of it at Tapeworm. The
Right.
majority was at the Miami-Dade College new studio that they built. And we were lucky enough for Trey from the band and his buddy Dan to basically do it basically for free on their time. Like, you know, like they were students of the like engineering students, so they had like projects to do. So instead of doing projects that they had to submit, that was their project. So they recorded an album. There were limitations. Um, Sometimes I wish that we would have re-recorded it for like a crispier sound, but hey, it was free and it was ready to. We did tapeworm like some mastering, some tweaks. We knew we had I think it was that the South Florida compilation show kind of going on at the same time.
So there were a lot of great bands on that compilation. The
Yeah,
shortest distance.
yeah.
So, what other bands from that period that we haven't already talked about that you can think back on that maybe you were going out to see or you were just a big fan of? Anyone come
Yeah.
to mind?
Yeah. My favorite pop punk band is New Found Glory. Um, I go to all their shows. They're like they nail, and I think it all goes back to like that whole simplistic way of putting together R&B songs. Like they mastered putting together pop punk songs, and so I appreciate that. Um, Quit obviously is like embedded in my soul. Um, I mean, there's so many bands on that. Uh, but I will go to, like the agency. That's like epic. That you can't. It's uncharted territory what they were doing back then. Um, I mean, eventually, I was lucky enough to have Klaus in one of my bands, and that was next level. Uh, Definitely coincide the agency, Milkshed, Quit, Vacant Andes. I mean, it's there's so much Pivot. You remember Pivot?
Absolutely. You kind of want to say almost like everybody.
It's like everyone, like
Right.
it's just like, obviously Dashboard, Chris Carrabba, I've gone to multiple Dashboard shows,
Sure.
sing along at the top of my lungs like everybody else, but um, there was something special going on during those times in South Florida. I don't know if that exists anymore down here, but then it was like it was a force.
It certainly was. And some of the
Yeah,
bands you had mentioned, like Newfound Glory, for example, or Chris,
yeah,
more north, right? Not so much Miami, but more
yeah.
like Broward, Palm Beach. So how often did you get up north of Miami at that point?
Oh, we would go Coral Springs, Club Q. If we weren't playing, we were going.
What are some of your memories of Club Q?
Club Q, Poison the Well, Poison the Well at Club Q. So many, so many. Like I would love to go to Club Q to see hardcore shows. Glass Cedar at Club Q. I remember there was a brawl out there where Glass Cedar was playing. I never forgot that. Um, some skinheads came out to stomp the ground, and we had to represent.
How often would you say that when you were going to shows that was kind of a thing where there was a lot of violence or fights and things that were kind of breaking out?
I think there was just an isolated group of people that would come and try to, you know, interrupt the shows by displaying different things. But then again, that's all part of you know, part of the scene. It's not the best, but with anarchy type of songs and lyrics and underground movements, like you're gonna have some outliers. And I guess it just gave it all. It's the same. It created the salad. It gave all the elements of the salad. Um,
That's a good
if
way
you
to
know
put
what I
it.
mean. Yeah, like it just made it be.
Yeah,
Without that, then you wouldn't have the element of that. Um,
right.
Things have died down a little bit with that situation, but I think everyone deserved to be there and to, as long as there was no, like the violence will shut down a venue, and that was like our worry. You know, you when violence gets too much, a venue will close, and we couldn't afford that back then.
When you think
Yeah.
about some of the shows that Foolproof played that were outside of Miami-Dade, what other locations come to mind inside of Florida?
Inside of Florida, Roses on the beach. We played with Good Riddance. That was awesome. Um, SFX skate park.
I
There was
remember
plenty of
that.
shows there.
Yeah.
Mm.
I missed that place. There was a lot of good shows at SFX.
Yeah, SFX skate park.
That was in
Um,
Pembroke Pines, I think.
yeah. That was that there was a whole different scene over there of bands and stuff like that. Um, where else? Club Q we mentioned. There was a spot in Orlando, like a record store, and in the back they had like a show stage area. Um,
What was it like playing in Orlando?
DIY record. It was actually DIY records.
Yeah, I think I remember that place.
Yeah, they had shows there.
Yeah, they did. What was the scene
Yeah,
like there compared to South Florida for you?
awesome, awesome. The unsung zeros. Those
Yeah,
guys were
yeah,
and then they became a couple of them became May, the band May, MAE. Um, and they had their run, they had their Warp tours, and they had all their. Orlando was heavy too. They had some heavy hitters out there, and a nice solid scene.
definitely.
Yeah.
What about Tampa? If you ever get out there to play a show or see a show?
No, no. Just to go see a show, but Jacksonville, Jack Rabbits.
Oh yeah, Jackrabbits, sure.
Yeah,
You play up
all
there
those things.
or just go to
Yeah,
play?
yeah.
What was that like?
Um, it was weird for us, that specific show. But
Why was it weird? What do you remember?
I mean, it's weird when like nobody knows what you're doing and nobody knows your songs and you're just there and you're okay, well, you're an opening band for like a headliner, or I don't even know um what we did that day, but we still gave it the energy that we usually did. So just the reception was weird that time. Just,
Right.
it happens.
Yeah.
Um, the best was out of Florida when we would play for 10 people and then we would play for 20 the next time around. And then we would build, play for 50 and then we would sell merch, and then play for 100. That was cool. Like the work, you would see the sacrifice of going on tour and taking a shower at the gas station, etc., to later see it evolve. Like something is happening, like there's an outcome, there's a positive outcome to what you're doing.
Right. Where were some of those places where perhaps the draw was close to the 100 mark?
The Conway, Arkansas, as I mentioned earlier, the first time we
Okay.
played with 2 people. Yeah.
See, I wouldn't have suspected that. So that's
Conway, Arkansas was our biggest draw in the United States.
wow.
It just happened to be. It just word of mouth, and it caught fire. Um, New Jersey, anything in New Jersey that we played because of the support of the label was great. Always more than 100, 150, 200 people. Um, Connecticut, New York, not so much.
What happened in New York?
I don't know. It was hit or miss for us.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough market. And then we did East Coast, Midwest. It's kind of like Chicago. Fireside Bowl was also really cool because of that
Yeah.
because of the compilation. Like people were coming.
Right. Absolutely. How'd you get
Yeah.
booked on that show? Playing
Through
Fireside?
the Scrape guys, the Scrape compilation guys. They said, "Hey, are you going to be around? We're having a show with this and that." I said, "Let's do it. We'll be there." But what did help us a lot was Cottonside bought like a jitney bus. And it was like, those shuttle buses that pick you up from the airport and take you to the car rental place or
Yep.
whatever.
Right.
Bought one of those and like a mini tour bus. So we would book the tours with them to like hang out with friends, and they would lead the way and we would be behind like in like an Explorer and like a trailer, like a landscaping trailer with equipment. So we would just have our caravan hit up all the spots, and we could sleep on the jitney, so that was good. We didn't need a hotel, or we didn't need like a place to crash. We could just crash in there. But we usually had places to crash. I would announce it to the crowd, hey, we're on tour, we're from Miami, we need a place to sleep tonight. Who wants to party? And then eventually we would just party and crash wherever.
What was the most uncomfortable or awkward place you remember having to sleep in?
Oh God. In Chicago, they offered us a spot. It was like a small apartment, 17 cats. And I'm allergic to cats. So
It's a lot of cats.
I had a sleeping bag and there was a, carpet, and I just lay down and I allergied my way to sleep, to the point where I can't do that. Like I'm gonna die. And so it was snowing and I got my stuff and I went to the jitney and I passed out in the jitney in the snow, and I woke up like my eyes were glued, iced down, nostrils ice.
Wow.
Like, yeah. But I knew that if I stayed in there, I wasn't gonna be able to sing the next day.
I don't doubt it. And that can,
Yeah.
that's a lot of cats. It's a lot of allergies going on right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like there were cats like on me. It was like my
Yeah.
worst nightmare. Yeah.
Wow. Was that the first time you saw snow, or had you seen snow before?
No, we had seen snow on tour, um, in Muncie, Indiana.
What was that experience like for the first time?
First time driving the trailer in the snow and slipping and sliding and driving in the middle of the night. That was terrible, man. And we're like iguanas down here. We don't do well in the cold.
Right.
And
That's true.
we look foolish out there with the beanie and snowboard jacket and the whole thing, and everybody's looking at you like, oh, look at these guys.
They could tell you're from Florida.
Yeah, they know. We don't do well in the cold. I
Right.
still don't. I still don't. Like I stay away.
So when you're on the road like this, how was the vibe with the other members? You guys get along pretty well? And was any conflicts on the way? You're together in such a, small vehicle for so long,
Yeah.
it's like you're in a relationship with somebody in more ways than one. So how did it go with everybody?
Well, we were like brothers, right? So you love like brothers and you fight like brothers as well. But we didn't have any major fights. I drove at night. Actually, Kevin and I drove the night shifts. If we had to, a lengthy, um, stop, I wouldn't trust, because people fall asleep, man. So I would trust myself and I would trust Kevin to not fall asleep. So we were the night drivers, and then we had, uh, the rest of the crew driving during the day. Um, we would try to plan and book the stuff like not too far away so that we didn't have to drive so long, because that gets brutal. But we pulled it off. We just hung out. We hung out. We're still brothers. Even members that left the band that are not with the band anymore and whatever, like we're still in contact. It was all for love. And the only way you found yourself out of that band was if you weren't just as committed as the rest. You know,
So did
um,
did the band ever officially break up then?
I quit. I quit the band myself,
Okay.
but I announced it. I said, like my run is over. Uh, it's time for me to move on. I'm gonna go to college, focus on that. Um, I hope you guys are not mad. um, but I didn't really have to do that. Uh, we were like on our way to book our West Coast trip to meet with, Fat Mike's wife that was running. I think she was running a label called, I don't know if it was Honest Dons or
That was the
something.
subsidiary of Fat Rack, at least one of them.
And she wanted to see us tour so that she could give us a shot, and she wanted to make sure that we were West Coast and East Coast ready, um, and then I proved to her that we weren't, because I like literally just said I can't tour any longer, so I need to quit. Um, but looking back at it, I didn't really have to do that. I could have just like not done that and then see wherever uh, it would have taken us. But whatever. I was satisfied with the mission that we accomplished,
Right.
which was play as fast as we could, um, and play as loud as we can, and do it for people and have them sing along to what you wrote.
Did you guys ever play that far out west, or was the furthest just a kind of like
No,
no?
we never went out there on tour. And if you think about it, it was short lived, like 96 to like 2001, you know, it wasn't like this huge long run that we had. It was by the time we got the disc out and all that, it was fairly short, you know.
Sure.
But definitely inspired by Cotton Side and however they did their thing and the the drive that they had, like, and it was all the same. It was all the same purpose, which is what I mentioned earlier. Just have some fun and play really fast, and and
I
and get people that like sing. Like that was it. That was the whole entire thing was that.
I remember Cotton Side. I know Newfound Glory for sure. I know Cotton Side had been signed briefly to the drive-through imprint of
Yeah,
MCA. It was
yeah.
Newfound Glory. I don't think that there was any other Florida bands at that time that were besides those two. Did they ever discuss anything with you guys at all with Foolproof, or even like Milkshed, or any bands that were kind of in that same in that same vein that they were kind of looking at?
Yeah, I think they were like definitely taking a closer look at Milkshed. And they would go to the shows because we would go to the shows and we would play with Cotton Side. So they would see us, they were like scouting then. Um, and they really liked Milkshed. I just it didn't work out, but they were, I mean, who doesn't? But yeah, Cotton Side, they got signed for a little bit and they played some huge shows because of that drive-through connection.
Right. What would you say was one of your favorite times seeing them play live, Cotton Side?
Um, I actually played that show. I was on drums when their drummer Sydney quit the band. There was like a kind of like a point in time where they didn't have a drummer. So they said, "Hey, we have some shows lined up and I want, we want you to play. Like if you can, let's hook it up, be in the band, whatever." So I did it. I joined the band and we played some shows. I think it was a show in um, Clearwater, something like that, with assorted jelly beans and something else. Big show, man.
Yeah.
It was like I don't know, it was 2,000, 3,000 people there. It was awesome.
Was that one of your first times playing a show out on that on the Gulf side of the state?
Yeah, but with Cotton Side, not with
Cotton
Foolproof.
side. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So what happened after that? Did it just kind of fade out, or what happened
No, I
after?
wanted to I wanted to focus on Foolproof, and then they got Shane to play drums. So I'm like, perfect. No hard feelings. Hey, it's time. I'm doing this. We're still playing shows together. It's like you know, one big family. So, but definitely that Milkshed, Conside, Foolproof, the agency connection,
Right.
amazing.
Definitely. Was there any other local bands in that time period that perhaps for whatever reason you just never shared a stage with, but you kind of wanted to?
Um, Further Seems Forever, one of my favorites. Songwriting skills to the max. Further Seems Forever, but um, I got to share the stage with the Boneheads, and the Boneheads really inspired me to do a bunch of this stuff that I did. Because again, they were carefree, did what they wanted, um, practice in their garage, like garage band type of deal, and they played cool shows. And it was, it sounded like, Screeching Weasel, um, the Crumbs, and that type of punk rock sound. The 00's, you know,
Right.
um, and they were just carefree, and that's what I liked about the Boneheads, and I got a chance to play with those guys.
Nice.
Yeah,
Was that in Florida?
in Florida, yeah. They were awesome, man. That was like top for me. Again, simple chord structure, vocals, just like an R&B song.
Right. So after Foolproof wrapped up,
Yeah.
at least from your side of it, what happened after that? What did you wind up getting into? Did you take a break from music, or what did you wind up
Yeah,
doing
yeah. I took a
besides
break.
college?
Yeah, I took a break, college times. Ended up started in Gainesville, ended up at UCF, graduated, came down to Miami. Actually lived in Orlando for a while, and then came down to Miami, went to a place called Vagabond in downtown. It was like the beginnings of like Winwood and all that stuff. And I bumped into Klaus from the agency. And I said, "Hey, you ready to start a band?" And then he said, "Yeah, I am." I'm like, okay. So we just need some players and let's get together. And that was Arsenal 88.
So Arsenal, what year around would you say that started?
Arsenal 88, 2010.
Okay, so we're talking what,
Years passed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem that long ago for some reason, but I guess it
right.
kind of is. It is.
Arsenal 88. And then it was Jim from Lose the Rookie on drums, Klaus on guitar and keyboards. We got Al Sal from Outer Reach on guitar, me on vocals. Um, but before Jim was Mikey Battle from Portraits of Autumn on drums. Those were the original members. And oh, and we got Joe from Foolproof on there too as well at the beginning.
Get him to. How did that happen with one of your former bandmates from Foolproof?
I just gave him a call. Hey, you want to give this another run? And he's like, sure.
Nice.
And so, we started playing with him and Mikey Battle, which is an awesome all-around guy. Um, and then songs started coming. We were practicing at a warehouse over here in Kendall, and then we started playing shows. Um, Different type of music, not so fast. There's even a couple ballads in there, but it was mainly focused on songwriting. You're a little older, wanted to try things that we didn't try before. But Klaus was the key there. Klaus was, so talented on piano and keyboard that all songs were written on keyboard first. So
Do you think
different.
do you think the sound was also different because yeah, you're older, but also were you listening to different styles of music at this point that
Oh
perhaps
yeah, 100%,
helped influence
100%.
the sound?
Yeah, 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 100%. Like, I'm not limited to listening to just punk rock or hardcore. Like, I listen to everything. And so I just like the way that it was written through piano. It wasn't even keyboard. It was like the piano at his house. So I would go to his house and we would write it together, line by line, melody by melody, and it was definitely fun. And if you hear the songs, they're on SoundCloud. They're not on Spotify. If you go to SoundCloud and you type in Arsenal 88, you can hear and how it transfers from the piano to like more like a rock and roll sound.
Right.
You hear the melodies that are a little bit deeper than like a Foolproof song per se.
It is definitely more melodic, a little more
Yeah,
rock sounding than just,
yeah,
straight ahead pop punk kind of sound.
correct.
And I imagine because a lot of the places you were playing when you were in Foolproof, those places had all come and gone at that point. So where were you guys playing with Arsenal 88?
It was tough. Well, we always had Churchill's. We had we did a show. Where was the show? The show was at it's now called the Gibson Room, but it was called Jada Cole's. We played there, big old show with the Furious Dudes, um, awesome band, and definitely limited spots to play. It was like makeshift. We played a show at this like reggaeton bar prior to the reggaeton party.
Okay.
There was a place on South Beach called Spanky's where we played on like the second floor, like balcony, while people were downstairs at the bar. Weird shit. But Churchill's was basically our spot for Arsenal.
Sure. I mean, that was like the last survivor.
Yeah,
Was Churchill's, at least
yeah,
down south, and then Respectables down in like up in Palm Beach. That was pretty
right.
much it. Like those are the two places that have, I guess, outlived all the other places. So did Arsenal '88 ever play outside of Miami-Dade, like Broward or
We
Palm
did not.
Beach?
We did not. We did record in Nashville with Mike Marsh at Mike Marsh's studio.
All right.
And then one of the songs he plays drums in, Heavy Weeks. He plays drums in Heavy Weeks, which is cool. Um, and so, he has his home studio, and he just updated a studio based out of Nashville. So you gotta be on the lookout for that. I haven't been there in person, but it looks really dope.
Was that the first time you guys ever went up to that part of the US, to Tennessee?
No, we had been up there. I had been up there, but with Arsenal, which yeah,
Did you play any shows up there while you were up
we
there?
we did not play any shows. We went there for like 5 days. We recorded and we came back.
Okay.
It was the idea of Arsenal was to write more than to play, like to put out something that was thought out, like a challenge of musicality per se.
Yeah. So how much longer after you guys got together, recorded, you put out, was it just digital or was it a
Yeah, it
was
was digital demo,
yeah,
nothing more than that. And then, like always, the band broke up. And that was it. It's
yeah.
just a lot of us have ADD. And so we go into, and it's not just us, a lot of musicians have ADHD. And so you get into a thing and then you're like involved and you're consumed by it, and then you jumped out of it and then you're into something else. So that happens to me a lot.
Was that the last band you'd say that you've been in since, or have you done anything else after
No, then
Arsenal 88?
after that, I joined a band called Madrina. Not singing, I was on drums. It's on Spotify. If you look for it, it's called Madrina Band. Um, Pretty cool. Girl singer, um, friends of mine. And we put out a couple songs, played some shows, and COVID hit, and that was the end of that. They're still playing. They play without a drummer, more like a digital, computerized drummer type of deal. But I did that for a couple of years. It was awesome.
Nice. Did you think, when that all happened, COVID, and it really changed a lot of things for bands and musicians that would play out? How did you kind of walk away from all that? Were you kind of done at that point, did you feel like once things started to kind of settle back to the way it was prior to COVID, that you were looking to get back into something again?
Yeah, during COVID, I did not think about music at all. Like there was no music for me. It was just time to spend, with my family, and we actually had a blast because we got to spend a couple of years just us, um, my kids, my wife. So that was cool. Not thinking about music at all. As a matter of fact, um, ever since then, I haven't really been so into writing or playing or joining a band. So I'm not in a band right now. Arsenal 88 right now gets together every Thursday without me, and they record. They write and record, write and record. And once in a while, they give me a phone call and say, "Hey, we re-recorded this song, or we're working on this song. Come by and maybe drop some vocals." So eventually, I will, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But there's always talk about the next Foolproof reunion. Um, We did one in 2016 at Churchill's.
I remember that, and I'm
Yeah,
glad you brought that up
yeah.
because that was a pretty good show. What do you remember of that 2016 reunion?
It was crazy because people were flying in, and I was working. When people are in town, you kind of have to host them. So we were just making plans to go here, this, that, practice here at this time, then wake up the next day, boom, boom, boom. Me having to go to work. Um, I'm a teacher, so I was at a graduation like event for my school, and I remember I'm sitting just watching the graduation, and all of a sudden my heart starts to get crazy, and then my left arm begins to numb, and I'm like, okay, well, I think I'm having a heart attack. And so I went to the hospital, and I had a panic attack, and that is something that I never even thought that I could even get to because I'm not an anxious person or anything like that. But I had so much on my plate that I just got overwhelmed. And I told the doctor, I'm like, hey, tomorrow there's a show and I need to play a show. Can I play a show? He's like, you can play a show. Just take it easy. I'm
I'm
like,
gonna
yeah.
say, did he know what a show meant?
And I'm like, it's not a regular show. Like it's gonna take a lot. And he's like, you're gonna go tomorrow and you're gonna play your show. All right. So I went in hesitating, and then as soon as the first song was over, I forgot about the panic attack that I had, thinking that it was a heart attack the day before that show. So there was some worry there. I wasn't as free as the prior reunion show that was I think it was 2002 at the Alley.
I think I saw. I think I wasn't at that one, but I think I saw a video of that one. I think this is on YouTube, maybe.
Yeah,
I think so.
that was like the first reunion show was 2002. The second one, 2016.
16.
Yeah. And now there's talks of another one coming up. Um, it's just so hard to get everyone together. Um, and remember the songs and practice the speed. The speed is what gets us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fast.
we're out there sweating, dying because it's just so fast.
Totally. It is definitely. I mean, yeah, there's different styles of pop punk, and it's definitely one of the more faster styles. And
Yeah.
it
But
definitely
it's
has
doable. It's doable.
everybody's still local to the area, or people move away, or what?
No, no. Enrique's in Connecticut. Um, Trey is in North Carolina. They're spread out. Kevin is in California, the Bay Area. Um, so Fabian, which ended up when Trey left the band, Fabian took over. He lives in Orlando. So we're spread out. So it's a matter of flying in, practicing, because you just don't fly in and play the show. You got to practice.
Right, of course.
Get up to speed.
Right.
Get up to speed and then see if you can pull it off. The idea is Milkshed, Foolproof, Cotton the Agency, and if Quit would bless us with a headline, that would be it. Then I can retire. No more reunion shows after
I mean that's the summit right there. I don't know.
that.
You can't outdo something like that. That would be a that would be
I
something.
poked I poked the idea with Klaus and Chris Druki from the agency and Mike, and I'm like, well, you know, it's gonna be sooner or never because we're getting older, and it has to happen. So we just need a place to play, really.
It kind of reminds me back in 2017. There was the Miami Punk Rock High reunion of all the bands that kind of started in the scene back in the late 70's and the 80's that played a nice event at Churchill's.
Yeah,
It was like a who's who of bands. I don't
yeah,
know if anything like that has been done yet for some of the bands in South Florida, whether it was punk or hardcore or ska or alternative or whatever the genre was. I don't know if anything like that has been done from the mid late 90's, early 2000s. Not that I can think
it
of.
hasn't. No, that's why you're gonna do
Okay.
it. So you have this platform, you have this show, and so then you're the man that's gonna set up. I'll get you the venue. I'll get you the venue.
Get me the venue and
I'll get you the venue.
I'll
How
talk
about
to the people.
that? You talk to your people, talk to my people. We'll make it happen, and then it'll be something.
Yeah. I think it's
That's
one
for
of the
sure.
I think it's one of the biggest challenges though from people I've talked to is a lot of people have moved around different parts of the
Yeah,
country and it can be challenging to set up, but that would be interesting to, on some scale to have bands from that period uh play something like that. They did it for the bands in the 80's in
yeah,
in South Florida, so why not for the bands that came in the next wave? So,
yeah, dude. 100%. I'll support that
it's a
all
cool
day.
idea.
That you came up with.
I can't take credit because of the one that happened in 2017, but it certainly would be interesting to see, and just it also made me think about when you brought up, Quit and the agency and Cotton Side and Foolproof. I mean, we can go on with what would make what just a great bill. I mean,
Oh
list
yeah, you can get Glass Eater in there. Um, just to add Glass Eater to that conversation, and
further
um,
seems forever.
Further Seems Forever. Finally play with Further.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I think it also just kind of goes to show just how deep of a bench the Florida scene was, and that's just South Florida. I mean, we talked about the scenes that were very happening in like Orlando, and I know you said you spent some time in Gainesville. We didn't even talk about like the Gainesville scene.
oh, forget
You
it.
know, you know, there are all
It's
these different.
endless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Florida definitely was a great place to be for music. So. And it's just been great getting a chance to chat with you today and talk about your life and the things that you've done throughout your journey, Foolproof, Arsenal 88, some of the work you did with Cotton Side,
Yeah.
and more. So it's just been a real pleasure getting a chance to chat with you today.
It was a pleasure being here with you, and getting to see again, talking about it. I get to relive a little bit of it, of that piece of time. Um, some of the things that I mentioned that I didn't even know I had in me. It just starts to come back, and you start putting some pieces together and understanding some of the things that went down. But definitely, um, the ultimate goal is to unite everyone for one big old show, one big old festival. And for the new bands, obviously, it's really tough to play in Miami, but it doesn't mean that you can't. There's some cool bands out there um, that are rocking. A Decade at Sea is one of the new bands that are rocking down here.
I don't know if I'm familiar. I'll have to look them up.
Yeah, I love them. Same style,
Okay,
but really good, really good.
nice. Well, I do want to give you the last word, Dre, as we're kind of getting ready to wrap things up here. Again, just want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with me today, and just been a pleasure having you on. And any final last words you want to share? I'm going to turn it over to you to close us out.
Yeah, keep rocking. I want to thank you, Jeff, for doing this because you're keeping it alive, keeping the flame alive. Um, I can't wait to see who else you got down the road because I do watch it. And it's not just me; it's a ton of people that are in the scene or were in the scene back then that do watch it because they either want to see a familiar face or they want to see what people are up to nowadays. So it's not just talking about the moments or talking about the experiences. It's also to see how people are living nowadays. Since we were all connected back then, and um, that's about it. So um, as long as you don't have to play fast to be fun nowadays, you could just play slow. But if the challenge is there, we'll go for it.